right, let's jump into this deep dive. We're tackling Fiat Accompli by Canibus today. And wow, this song,
It's something else, right?
it's not your typical hip-hop track.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're really going to break down the lyrics, the wordplay. It's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. Definitely a good idea to have those lyrics in front of you if you're following along.
Absolutely. So even the title itself, Fiat Accompli,
Yeah.
it's a pretty loaded phrase. What's the significance there?
Well, it's Latin, right? It means something like let it be done or it is done. And I think Canibus is using it to emphasize that feeling of inevitability, like
Yeah.
this is the state of the world and there's no going back.
Like a done deal. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
And then he just dives right in. Type on keyboard blind, sign in, everybody say hi. It feels so immediate, so connected to our digital lives.
Totally. It pulls you right in, doesn't it? Like we're all part of this online world, typing away without really knowing who's on the other end.
Yeah, it's a bit unnerving when you think about it. And then he throws in these names. Morgan Freeman and Danny Glover. Not your usual hip-hop shout-outs. What's the deal with that?
I think he's using them to represent authority figures, Like, these are voices we trust, voices we associate with reason and wisdom. But Canibus makes you question those perceptions. Are they really who we think they are?
Yeah, it's making me think about how easily we can be influenced by those in power, especially in this age of information overload. And then the song takes a darker turn. He starts talking about martial law and a population crying out, being provoked to war.
That's pretty intense.
For sure. It definitely paints a bleak picture of the world, doesn't it? A world where governments control everything and people are constantly on edge.
Like, we're all just pawns in some bigger game.
Yeah.
It's unsettling. Then there's that line, if you don't want beef, pipe down that inflammatory speech, throw you in the gulag for weeks. Whoa, that's chilling.
He's not holding back, is he? It's a stark warning about the dangers of censorship.
Yeah.
The Gulag was a brutal prison camp in the Soviet Union. He's basically saying, if you speak out against the powers that be, you'll be silenced. Yeah, it's a powerful image. And it makes you think about how fragile freedom of speech really is. And then he shifts gears a bit, paints this really vivid picture of life in the hood. The hood die young with guns and tied tongues. Daughters and sons smoke drugs that fry lungs. It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely. There's a lot of pain and despair in those lines. Canibus is giving voice to the struggles of marginalized communities, the people who are often overlooked and forgotten.
It's a stark reminder of the inequalities in our society.
Yeah.
And then he talks about silver and copper not being enough to stop them. It feels like a commentary on economic inequality, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like, no matter how hard you try, the system is rigged against you. It's that feeling of powerlessness, of being trapped in a cycle of poverty and struggle.
There's a lot to take in, for sure. Canibus really packs a punch with his lyrics.
He's a master of language, that's for sure. And he keeps going with that theme. The problem that we face is race. Even if you ain't black, you can't escape this draconian fate. Like he's saying, it affects everyone, no matter who you are.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful statement about how systemic these problems are.
Right.
And then he throws in this line about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Partnership, Trans-Pacific, free speech no longer permitted, guilty is charged, you will not be acquitted. It's like a warning, almost.
Yeah, like our freedoms are being eroded. It's interesting that he mentions the Trans-Pacific Partnership, right? That was a huge trade deal that got a lot of people worried about globalization and its impact. Maybe Canibus is tapping into that anxiety.
It definitely makes you think about how much control we actually have over our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about being on the blacklist and everyone getting stripped. It feels kind of relevant to what's going on today.
Right, like that feeling of being watched, of having our privacy invaded. It's pretty unsettling, and then it gets even darker. Get small, stay home and pray, Raytheon drones strafe, no home is safe. Wow.
It's terrifying imagery, right? Like,
Yeah.
even in our own homes, we're not safe from the threat of violence.
Yeah. He's really highlighting the vulnerability of modern life, how technology can be used for both good and evil. Okay, this next part is where the imagery gets really dense. Don't watch the throne, watch that Nordic's face. Iditarod dog race across unthawed straits. What do you make of that?
Honestly, it's a bit of a head-scratcher.
Hmm.
But I think he's trying to make us think outside the box. Like, throne could symbolize power. And Nordic's face, maybe it's a specific person or a reference to white supremacy. And then the Iditarod dog race, it's like this grueling journey, maybe a metaphor for the struggle against oppression.
I like that interpretation. That's definitely a lot to unpack. And then there's that weird image of an agent provocateur in all lace and someone named Kate feeding him grapes. It's surreal.
It's like a fever dream.
Yeah.
Maybe he's trying to capture the chaos and confusion of our times, the feeling that nothing really makes sense anymore.
Could be. Then he mentions Svalbard. Did you know what that was?
I had to look it up. It's an island in the Arctic Ocean, right?
Yeah, and they have this global seed vault there, basically a backup for all the world's plants in case of a catastrophe. It's pretty amazing.
It's like a symbol of hope in a way.
Yeah.
But then Canibus asks this question, well, okay, but why the flight time shorter than the pat-downs take? It's like he's mocking airport security, right?
There's definitely some irony there. The long security checks represent the overreach of the state, while the short flight symbolizes how fleeting our freedom can be. That's a pretty clever comparison. And then bam, he drops this bombshell. USA Constitution got shredded in '08. Able-bodied adults can't get out of the cold. They say it's the Luciferians' fault.
Oh, okay. That's a lot to process.
Yeah.
He's getting into some conspiracy theory territory now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely questioning the legitimacy of the government, suggesting that there's a hidden agenda behind the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah.
And the Luciferians, well, that's a whole other rabbit hole, usually refers to this secret group that's supposedly pulling the strings behind the scenes.
Pretty dark stuff. And it gets even darker with lines like, and now Holocaust healthcare is not much better than welfare. Assassins dressed like mailmen. He's painting a pretty bleak picture of the world, isn't he?
Definitely. Like there's danger lurking everywhere, even in the most mundane places. And then he mentions Zimmerman, probably referring to George Zimmerman, who killed Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, that's a clear reference to racial injustice and the violence that plagues our communities. It's a stark reminder that these issues are still very much present. And then the song ends on this really somber note. Righteous people of the world protest in vain, while the Antichrist reigns, 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 and reigns. It's like all hope is lost.
It's a bleak ending, for sure. But maybe that's the point. Canibus is forcing us to confront the harsh realities of the world, the things we'd rather ignore. It's a wake-up call.
Yeah, it's a lot. It definitely makes you think. And, you know, it's not just the message. It's the way he delivered it, the wordplay, the imagery. It's incredible.
It really is. He's a master of language, no doubt about it. Even when the imagery gets kind of crazy, there's always this deeper meaning lurking beneath the surface.
It's like he's challenging us to decode his lyrics, to really dig deep and figure out what he's trying to say.
Exactly. It's what makes Fiat Accompli such a rewarding listen, you know? You can keep coming back to it and discovering new things every time.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who want to check it out for themselves, you can find Fiat Accompli on Sia Radio's Spotify playlist and Rippers Unite on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely give it a listen. The lyrics are mind-blowing, trust me.
They really are.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been a pretty intense, deep dive, but I think it's been worth it.
I agree. Fiat Accompli is a complex song, but it's also a really important one. It forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about the world we live in.
And it makes us think,
Right.
which is what great art should do.
Absolutely. It challenges our perspectives, makes us question everything, and ultimately that's a good thing.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into Canibus's Fiat Accompli. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds open.